We are.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. This session is how VFPX can make you a superhero. My name is Rick Schumer. Let's get started. For those who don't know me, I'm the president of White Light Computing. We're a small but agile development shop in Washington, Michigan.
Not on camera.
Oh, not on camera.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. A small but great team of developers who crank out FoxPro and .NET code for many, many businesses around the world. I'm a partner of Forward Thinking Software. We're the creators of CleverFox. Doug and I are happy to talk to you if you have any issues with backups or your customers have any issues with backups. Partner at Geek Gatherings put these conferences on. A former winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award, which was the last time I got choked up in front of a crowd. Retired Microsoft MVP. That's about the only time you'll hear retired and Rick Schumer in the same sentence. VFPX administrator, which you'll see why I love doing this stuff through the session. I've offered a few tools. I've written a few books, put together a few articles, but the most important thing on this slide is my email address. If you have any questions about this session or any other sessions, feel free to reach out. Today's agenda is really to introduce you to a variety of different VFPF projects that really don't get any love at conference sessions. We've all seen sessions on Thor. We've all seen sessions on GoFish. You know, these tools, and while very important to us, are there are a whole bunch of others. There's 140 plus projects on VFPX. So I thought this year what I would do is just go through some of the other ones, most of which I use, and just share some of the information about them. Hopefully it'll be an inspiration to you guys to check out the project list if you haven't in a long time. We still add new projects on a regular basis. Developers around the world are helping all of us out. Maybe it'll even spawn a few ideas that you may have. And I'm going to show a project that is so small and probably insignificant, which will show you that we take even small and insignificant projects that may help other developers out. One thing I could tell you for sure is I'm trying to cram 64 written pages into 75 minutes. And that is not possible from what I've been able to practice. So if I don't get to something, please know that there's all kinds of information in the white paper. All the things I forget to say are in the white paper. So feel free to check that out, do a little homework, save yourself a little time. As I mentioned, 140 projects can be found on VFPX in the GitHub repository, as well as individual developers repositories. We don't just put everything under the VFPX repository. Many developers have repositories, then submit the projects, and we just point to those projects. And I'm not going to talk about this, but each of the projects that are in the white paper, I talk about how to get them. There's no single one way to get any of the projects. You may be able to get them in the Thor check for updates, which is one of the easiest, I should say, ways to get the VFPX code. But you can also download them from the individual projects through the download zip files. You can clone the repositories if you want to have them where you can work directly with the repositories. Or as Doug showed yesterday, you can use the new FoxGet tool that will help get the projects as well. So let's just go out there. For those who don't know how to get to VFPX, just go to vfpx.org. Very easy, simple to type in. Click on the projects page and just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and so on. Okay, there are a ton of projects out there. And think about this. If you look at it from my perspective, at least, we have a small team of 6 developers now, and a bunch of contractors who work for us. But yet every project leader who's on this list is part of our team now. We literally extend our team through VFPX. Okay. I usually don't cover this one as a project. In fact, I'm doing them in alphabetical order, but I'm doing this one first. And I added this sort of at the last minute, if you consider the last minute, like earlier this month. And the reason I added it to the list of the projects I wanted to talk about is over the last 2 months, I have run into 4 developers who are not using the version of the help file that comes from VFPX. You're cheating yourself if you have not. Okay, there's a lot of information in the help file. Now, most of you are probably not using the broken help file that Microsoft shipped with the last version of VFP9. But if you are, kudos to you for being able to use it because it was unusable. But it's been enhanced and fixed by Francois, who's the project manager. It was fixed by him and several other developers and given to Microsoft, who turned around and made it open source for us. Why is that important? Because now we can change it. We can enhance it. We can add the the VFP advanced commands that have been added by Chen. So all that can be done, and it's really important to do so. I can show you what it looks like, but I'll probably save some time and not do that.
Rick?
Yes.
I assume there's a way to send comments to, if you run across things in the help file that are wrong.
Yeah.
Complete.
Yeah. If there are issues, the question is, what can you do with if there's issues or things you want added? Just post issues. In fact, that's another good point. If you have any issue with any of the projects, every repository that we have for VFPX has an issues section, and you can post issues for the project manager to address. Okay, that's the VFP9 help file. We'll skip that for now. All right, Code Analyst. Code Analyst is a tool that Rick Borup talked about in his session briefly. It's basically there for refactoring, or was initially created for refactoring, finding different bad smells that you would have within your code or somebody else's code that you are taking over possibly. It comes with some base rules, some logic that's built in that when you scan a file or scan all the files in your project, it will find and log those issues that you can review and then go in and edit, make changes to your code or whatever you need to do. You basically start up the project or the tool and you pick the rules and run the analysis. But what I really like to use it for, and I use this fairly regularly because we take over through project rescues or assisting other developers with their projects, is that I'd like to be able to run it to find certain things that I've been burned by in the past. How many people have been burned by on error star in somebody else's code? Because I'm certain none of you have written your own. Okay, on error star is a great way to have perfectly great running code. Okay, things like a return statement within a with end with construct. How many people have been burned by that one? Anyone not know what that is? It will generate a C5 randomly at some point later. Okay. So those are the kinds of things you can use code reference to find in the code. Whoops. Okay, when you install code references, what it will do, if you install it through the Thor check for updates, what it will do is it will add a couple of menu items, or actually it will add one menu item. Under applications, you will see Code Analyst being added. This is the program that it installs in Thor. Just a quick note, it doesn't work. Okay, and it's a small bug, but it's something that I just want you to be aware of so you can fix it when you get it. Right down here, you can see this pound define did not have the correct pathing for where it installed it. It actually installed it in Code Analyst -master. Okay, so if it doesn't work, check that code out. All right. When you run the Thor version of Code Analyst, it will prompt you if you want to pick a file or a folder. Then we'll ask you if you want to open the configuration screen. This is important because it allows you to select the rules that you want to run for this analysis. Okay, you don't have to. You can cancel this and it will use the existing selected rules that you have. I'm going to say, yeah, I want to open that. This brings up the list of rules. Okay. All these were put in by Andrew McNeil, who's the project manager. He's borrowed some rules from the community, incorporated in, which is great. Another thing you can submit through the issues on the repository. So anyways, you just go in and you check which rules you want to run. You can add your own rules, which is super important. You can update the existing rules if you're not comfortable with some of the parameters per se, because there's one that will check how many lines of code are in the method. If you're uncomfortable with the number it is, I think it's 150, you can change it to 5,000 if you want. If you want it to be 25, make it 25. You'll just get lots more warnings. The code, you can put a description in down in on the middle left side, and on the right side, you can look at the code that's in there. All the code is Visual FoxPro code, so you can add your own. There's plenty of examples here so you can understand how to write a line rule, a procedure rule, a method rule, so on. And so your choices are many. Let's just go through, like too many redirects, similar methods. So it actually will help you refine if you have duplicated code, possible opportunities for bind events, too many comments. Is that really a possibility? I'm not so sure that's a possibility, but actually it flags my code quite often. I really have to stop commenting. Return within a with. That's the C5 avoider, and so on. Nesting rules. How many times you nest your if, do cases, and so on, do whiles, and so on. So anyways, once you select your rules, and you close the screen, it runs the analysis. And I'm just going to pick one program. And it runs the analysis. Now, it ran very quickly here. If I had run it on the project, I would be skipping a whole topic within the my session. So anyways, here's what it brings up is a thing that looks, a dialogue that looks very similar to code references. You have the tree view on the left side of the dialogue, and on the right side, you have all the, I just double clicked on the, to expand the rules that were violated. And it just brings your whole list. Now, in this case, I have a method here that I'm just going to double click on. It says it has an excessive number of comments. Why do I have so many, an excessive number of comments? Well, in this case, it's because I was testing my on-error star checker, which I wrote yesterday and is not working. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it to work. So anyways, in this method, I have 3 comments and 1 line of code. It thinks it's an excessive set of comments. It's not. It's fine. So even though you'll find that your rules will be violated or maybe triggered, it doesn't mean that they're really necessarily a problem. You just have to determine that in the human analysis of the analysis. Okay. All right. Nice things about this tool. You can export the list of rules that were violated through the export, and that will dump it to a DBF. You can print it out if you need something to, in my case, I like to, I feel better when I check things off. And so by printing it off, I can literally scratch out the ones I've fixed. But it's a nice little printout, nice little report that you can post out. If you want to run the analysis again, you can do refresh after you fix some things to shorten your list, if that's what you're trying to do. Or you can run a whole new analysis by clicking on Analyze. I think that's what I have. Any questions on code analysis? Yes.
Maybe a dumb question. When you said too many redirects,
What's a redirect?
A redirect in this case is, I'm sorry, the question is, what is a redirect if you have too many redirects? It's if you have this form dot page frame dot page dot parent dot page 2 dot text box dot yeah, it's all the, especially one of my favorite checks is this form dot parent. It checks the code for that. Okay. Now, those are the kinds of things that you run into over time, whether it's your own code or somebody else's. And it's easy to refine rules. I mean, literally, I copy rules.
Is there a built-in way to ignore a warning?
Yes. Is there a way to ignore warning? Well, first of all, you can write code in the rule. You could write code to control the level of warnings that you get. But also you can uncheck it in the options to skip processing that rule for that run. Yep.
Can you run it on a project?
Can you run it on a project? Yes, you can. And depending on the size of your project and the number of rules that you check on, you may have time to go get coffee, water, make sandwich. I mean, it's an intense check because it's looking at every line of code in your system. Yes.
Yeah, my app will have a PRG variable equal full break. Then down below it checks the app privileges, and then it'll do a do of the string. Is this thing smart enough to realize that, and we'll just hit the project entry and maybe say Rick's never being called? That's kind of my question.
Our question is, can it analyze whether code is called or not? And that is more along the line of a coverage profiler versus a code analyst. Mm-hmm. All right, just a couple quick things, just to show you some code about the rules specifically. One of the things I do is find suspend. I want to make sure that suspend is not my code because suspend does bad things in production unless you have on error star. And so what I do is basically you get a reference to the analyst object. When you run code analyst, it creates an analyst object on the underscore screen object. In this case, it's a line. I'm looking at the line of each line of code within whatever procedure, method, or program that I'm running. So I get a reference to that, or I get the string of the line of code. And then I just check to see if suspend is in that line and how many times it occurs. Usually it's going to only be one because you can't suspend. But once I know that I have it, I'm also checking to make sure that the comments, that line of code is not commented out. This goes to your point, Joel, where you can refine when the rules are going to fire and what warnings are going to be collected. So once I determine it's not a commented line, I add a warning through the analyst object, and I make the string that I want be very descriptive so that it knows what the warning is, as well as the line of code. I include the line of code on that. And once I write that, the analysis for that rule is done.
Question.
Yes.
So it ignores abbreviation, SASP.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. If it's shortened. Yeah. If you have commands that are shortened, in my case, I don't. But if you do, it may make sense in that case to look for SUSP. And so, yeah, that's actually a good enhancement for this code. Yes, Steve.
I assume from that little discussion there that regular expressions aren't built into what you could search for.
Yeah, are regular expressions built into the analysis? No, you would have to write that yourself and however you want to process that. Yep. Oh, great. You guys are, for Sunday morning, you guys are right on top of things. I appreciate this. One more question.
I noticed you didn't say release. LO analyst said doing release, you're doing equal null. Is that a safer way to play?
Is it a safer way to release the object by doing a null? Actually, the safest way is to do a null and use a release command. If you really want to make sure you don't have hanging references. Yep. It's belt and suspenders. No pun intended with the suspend method. Comments. I have a standard in our for our coding standards for doing a star question mark as something to go back and check for before we do a release, or whatever it is that I want to remind myself to go do. And this is one way to do that. Now, can I use GoFish to do that? Yes, I can. But sometimes I do an analysis on it before we do a major build. And instead of doing 5 searches, I can do 1 analysis. Okay. And then my on-air star checker, which it was an idea I got the other night at dinner, and I decided to write it yesterday, and I couldn't get it done in time. Sorry. But if I do get it, I'll upload it to the samples. Or maybe I'll upload it this way, and you guys can tell me what's wrong with it.
We can analyze it.
Thank you. All right. Any questions on Code Analyst now before I move on? Okay, no, none taken. All right, CSV processor. How many people have to import or export data to CSV format? Not everybody, but close. The people who didn't raise their hand probably are just too tired to do so. CSV, I mean, we all have used copy to CSV in FoxPro, and it works great, comes out, generates the data, but it will skip things, right? Like, say, memo fields. So you have to do queries of the data to, pre-stage the export sometimes. Well, CSV processor will actually export the memos without you having to do the query to pre-stage it. That was the first thing when I saw this that drew me to the idea of using this. Now, exporting memos with carriage return, line feeds, and the tab character can wreak havoc on your exported CSV file, correct? How many people have run into erroneous carriage returns just hanging out in the middle of a CSV file just to make your day, correct? So this code will actually handle that. On the export, it will export the data as is with the carriage return line feeds in it, and it will import it with the carriage return and line feeds in it. That by itself made me interested in this project. The initial, the real world project that I used this for the first time was we have a project that was developed for 30 years by another developer actually located here in the Phoenix area. Never been to a Southwest Fox conference. And the code, I'll say, was clever. Okay. Thousands of lines that manually generated the CSV file. And every time our customer asked me to maintain it, I said, "Are you sure?" And I'm not kidding. Are you sure? Now, the reason it was clever code, it was very justified. I don't want to make it sound like the developer wasn't doing it the right way. They were doing it the right way for this particular case. The dialogue presented had probably 40 or 50 objects on it to allow the customers to pick and choose what was exported, as well as determining how many columns were exported. There's a base set of code, a base set of columns, and then based on all the 40 or some choices, more columns added. And I mean, could there have been different ways to do it? Yes, but the person chose to do it. Now, the kicker for the requirement that I had was we need to take that data and consolidate it. Okay, what do you mean by consolidate it? Well, there's going to be 10 or 15 rows that have a lot of duplication. We want to bring those down, summarize the information of those 10 or 15 rows, and just put some summary information in. Okay, I'll see what I can do. Oh, and by the way, can you make that as inexpensive as possible? These requirements. So I decided to take a crack at CSV processor to see what it could do to import the CSV file that was originally generated so I could pull it into a cursor and then do some easier programming to consolidate the records. It worked great because CSV processor on the import side will actually, and I don't think there's artificial intelligence built into it, but it will do some really nice programmatic intelligence on the import side to determine what data types you have, and it will build the cursor from the data that's in the CSV file. Now, I did that. It worked great with the data I was working with. 1 year later, no changes made to the code, truncation started happening. Interesting. Let's see why. Let's see what I got here. All right. Very easy to work with. Create an object on CSV processor. By the way, CSV processor has dependencies of other projects. Okay, they're documented in the white paper, but you do not just install CSV processor. You have to go get some other projects and drop that code in the same folder. Okay, so in this case, I do CSV processor, create the object. Oh, one other thing. You have to do CSV PRG. That does all the things to set up all the pathing and the procedures and whatnot. Create the object, import. That's it. 3 lines of code. The data is imported. It is fast. Okay. I've imported now. Your mileage may vary, but I've imported data rapidly for a long time using this with lots of data, and it seems to be really well. Do really well. You can check the sample size. This is a really key part. Okay. This is why I was receiving truncation. The data is, have you ever run into when you did a select statement and FoxPro looks at the first record and determines the size of the result of the select statement? This is identical to that, only different. I mean, it goes through what I was looking for was, why is it that I'm getting the truncation? Because if it did an analysis on all the data in that column, it would know that it was longer than what it determined. There is some black magic that's in there to determine the size of it. I haven't been able to decipher all the code, and I don't really care because I know how to fix it. And that is that you will go through a part of the data, because if it's going through 1 million rows on import, to do the analysis on that is going to take probably longer than the import. So anyways, that's one of the key sizes. So I'm just going to run this code. And what I did is I imported a CSV file that I created with a copy to. Okay, nothing fancy, but we will see if we go to the memos. Okay. Big fonts. Oh, I didn't bring memos in on this one, I guess. Okay, not a big deal. We got other examples. Okay, so here's the table structure it brought in, and I did not create a first name column with 6 characters in it, but that's how much was in my data. Okay, I did not specify anything. All I said was cursor, CSV processor, import. I didn't specify anything. Now, if we provide a cursor to it, okay, here in the case here, I create the object, I use the data, I'm selecting the data where 1 equals 0 to get a structure only cursor. And I come down here, I can do an export, but I also can do an import. What I thought you could do on the import side was just pass the cursor name in. And that's where I made my mistake. I thought that would, because the second parameter is a cursor, I assumed that that's what it meant, that you could use that as a cursor. But that's not what you do. What you do is you set the work area property of the processor object so that it knows to use that that cursor. And once I did that, my truncation goes away because now I have a cursor that has a structure that it's going to now use instead of creating the structure on the fly. That's the key. Any questions?
Well, I had a question on the source.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Did you say that this thing could determine I had a date field, a numeric field, a currency field? That's by analyzing this.
The structure, the question is, how does the structure know basically what type of data types it's working with? And that is that it looks at the data. And I will tell you that if you don't provide the cursor, it may be creative in what it does. And the white paper basically goes into great detail that I don't have time to talk about here today, about some of the differences I saw, like date fields or date time fields were not set up as date time fields. Now the data was there, but if you went to use it as a date time field, you were in trouble.
Except with CSV processor, you can also give a schema.
Okay. So Doug says you can give CSV processor a schema. The field, are you talking about field mapping?
Yeah.
No, field mapping, because the CSV processor and CSV imports will just take it in sequential column order. Field mapping lets you have a different input from the CSV format. So it maps fields from one column to a different column.
Can't you also specify the data type as well?
Doug says you can specify a data type, and I can't recall, but I think you can. I think you can, but read the documentation. No, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be flippant there. I'm trying to save time because apparently I'm already behind, but that's okay. All right, moving on. This shows, like here, I highlighted the memo field. It will export memo fields. In this case, you can see the last update time came in as a varchar 21. Not exactly what you would want, but again, you can fix all that. All right. Yep, Kevin is here. Good. So I want to take an opportunity, as Kevin's so good at pointing out other people's issues. So desktop alerts may have been one of the earliest of the VFPX projects. And Kevin Ragsdale is a project manager for this, and has basically written a very easy to use way to pop up little toaster messages that come up off the system tray. Great way to communicate information to your users that they may or may not have to see. And I say that because these toasters will time out. They fade away, right? Now, if it's really important that they see the information, use some other type of UI to communicate that to them. But this is a nice way to just pop up a little temporary window with some key information and the ability to click on things to do other things if you like. Okay. You can control everything from the text icon, the text on the alert, the icons, the sound, and the links to tasks. And you can do this through a configuration or coding. What I asked Kevin not so long ago, hey, Kevin, can we modernize these? And Kevin said, no. He said no, I don't. He said he probably could, but he doesn't know what it would take to do that. What I was not suggesting that Kevin had to do it. I was just curious if he knew off the top of his head if it was complicated or if I should just not do it. But anyways, it's something to check out. Let's go take a look at some code. Okay. Desktop alerts, key things to know. Every alert object, you have to have a one-to-one relationship between alert objects and the alert that's displayed. Because once the alert's displayed, it's on a timer. It's counting down how it's going to fade out, and it will go away. And when it does that, it releases itself. one of the things I struggled with when I was initially working with desktop alerts is I just like to create an object, set some properties, run it. And then I thought I could reuse that object, and it was like crashing on me. So just make sure that you know that you have to do one alert object to an alert that you do. The alert, VFP alert manager is a COM object. So it's running outside of your application, and it will work. It actually has the ability to call back into your application through probably dark magic. Okay. So in this case, I'm creating a CSV file. Shocker. Go in, I create the alert through the new alert method, and then you just set properties. I create a title, a subject, some text, and I'm sorry, I didn't create property, I create variables. In this case, I typically create properties within my code to work with this. And then you just pass to the alert object all the things that control the various aspects of how the alert looks and works. Okay. So if we run this, you probably didn't hear that, but it did a little chime. I'm going to pin that so it doesn't fade away. And so I basically I passed the icon. I have it where it has a little title, and I created the CSV file. Okay. So it's just a simple little easy to do alert. Nothing fancy. In this case, I'm going to put some callbacks in, and a callback allows me to link and have it react to clicking on icons or hyperlinks within the alert itself. I'm not going to have time to go through all the details of this, but it's all in the white paper and in the sample code. That one did a little cha-ching because we made a sale. New order submitted to the customer. Now we see this, it looks blue. That's probably a good idea to zoom in on that. It has a little blue hyperlink to it, and I can click on that to do something. Say, bring up the invoice or take it to the order screen, whatever it is that I want to do. But I also have the ability to go and click on the ability to download something or click a process button to do something within my application. Okay. So this is a kind of extensions you can do with desktop alerts, and it provides you or your users something. What I like to do is replace all the wait windows in our system that are not like in an intensive process. You don't want to be going in a tight loop and generating these alerts, because it will stack them up. I don't know what it'll do if it stacks them up. Kevin, do you know what it'll do if it stacks them up past the left side or right side of the screen?
It'll move to the left and just keep going. You can fill up your entire screen.
All right. I say challenge me. Challenge accepted. So yeah, really nice UI. I don't even care if Kevin doesn't make it so it looks like a more Microsoft toaster. I really find it easy to use. I have it in numerous applications, including the one that manages all the data for here. Whenever I send Doug the who's coming list, it pops up an alert for every file that I zip up and send to him. And it's just a nice way to communicate to the users what you're doing. Any questions? Yes.
This question is actually for Noel. Off the top of your head, see here, do you know if you could call that from Parallel Fox?
Yes.
The question was, can you call desktop alerts from Parallel Fox? And I would think you could. It's just FoxPro code, right?
I think I'd actually done that in the SAP example like 10 years ago.
See, and another great way to spawn off that many more alerts simultaneously.
Fill up your screen a little faster.
Yes. So when the alert's closed or when the callback is clicked on, one of the events are to do a callback, you will be your program will be able to respond to all of those. And you check on the backside when it's what was done by the user. In this case, I just closed the alert and I could tell that was just closed, that the user did nothing specific with it. All right.
Rick,
Yes.
are alerts for a single user's instance of an application, or can one user's behavior pop up an alert on another user's?
Yeah, the question is, can you send alerts to your coworkers? No, but that would be fun. Yeah, no, it's only specific to the desktop that the application's running on.
Maybe you could create an alert listener that,
Sure. Yeah, you could. Yes. The question is, could you create a report list? I'm sorry, a alert listener. Yes, you could, if you needed to. In fact, yes, you could have a whole background task running just to pop up alerts like new CSV file received, new order received, new paychecks delivered. Those kinds of things could be all done.
yeah, I'm not going to tell my boss.
All right. Well, can you give me your boss' email? I'll send it to him. Oops. Let's go back here. Okay. Fox barcode. For about 20 years, every single time I was on the cusp of doing a barcode feature in a project, I switched jobs. Not intentionally. I actually wanted to do barcoding. I always thought barcoding was cool. But back in those days, barcoding was not as easy as it is with Fox barcode. You had to have special fonts installed or an ActiveX control or something that would allow you to do barcode or integrate barcoding with your application, especially back in the FoxPro DOS days, which was last week. Not that I was asked to do barcoding with that project, but we still do FoxPro DOS code. So anyways, barcoding with Fox barcode, thanks to Luis Maria Gallan and Guillermo Carrero, who has since passed away after helping with this project. These guys have made it trivial to do. All right, I have to reboot here. Okay. Fox barcode comes with a great little example tool that helps you as a developer learn all the features of Fox barcode. First of all, you have, what is it? 23 different barcode types. Okay. What you're going to use is going to be dependent upon your customer's requirements. It's just a matter of you deciding what way you want to go. If I want a code 39 extended, it generates the code. It generates the barcode as an image. This is the whole point of Fox barcode. Every barcode is generated as either a PNG, JPEG, whatever it is. There are multiple types of image files that you can create. The settings for each one, all the properties, you can rotate it 90 degrees. You can rotate it 270 degrees, 180. All of these settings that you see on this dialog are proper. So you basically create object on Fox barcode, set some properties, tell it to generate, and boom, the image is generated. What can you do with those? You can put them on forms. You can put them on reports and so on. Very easy to use, works great. I have lots of customers raving about the results of barcoding. I also have lots of customers begging me to do barcoding for one of our packages that I haven't implemented yet. But certainly what it can do is is remarkable, and it generates. You can change colors of the barcode, all kinds of things. Human readable things like the font, the color, and so on are just more properties. The images, where it's generated, you decide where it's generated, whether you put it in a temp folder or a specific application folder or on the server or up to a website. It's all up to you. The best part about this is Builder Script. The Builder Script is a button. Let's point that out. Towards the bottom here, along the bottom, Builder Script, third one from the right, is that it generates the code that you need based on the dialog here. So you can consider this like a builder within Visual FoxPro for barcodes. Okay, set some properties, make your choices. Here's the code that you need to paste into your program. Okay, and you can even copy it directly from a button. Makes it even easier. You don't even have to highlight it. Let's see what we got here. Yep, I think that's all I have. Any questions on Fox barcode?
Do you have to build the barcodes in advance? Do you have to create labels where each label might have a different barcode? Is that doable?
Yeah, the question is, do you have to generate the labels or the barcodes in advance to incorporate them into reports, labels, or even forms? The answer is you can call it within the report writer. You could call it to generate it. Generating it in advance is, you just have to retain the file names so that you can tell the report writer which files you're going to use on the barcodes. Yes, Charles.
I've got a tip. We do this a lot. And if you're generating barcodes from your apps, there are some free apps you can get on your iPhone or your Android phone to validate that the barcodes are right. So if you're doing this, it's always a good idea to check them every once in a while and make sure that they're readable and that they're in the proper format for what it is that your customers are asking for.
Yeah, Charles's comment for those virtual is that there's phone apps that you can use to scan barcodes to test them so that you know before they're in production that they're not working. Exactly. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. One of the barcodes that Fox Barcode does not do is QR codes, which are very popular these days. You see them at museums to get information about whatever you're looking at the museum. Restaurant menus have them, or restaurants have them, so you can click to their virtual menus. Website links also used for nefarious things, so be careful. TV commercials. An entire 30-minute spot during the Super Bowl had a QR code on the screen. I was like scared to look at it. One comment about Fox Barcode, and you can work with this, but one thing you have to be careful on is that if your QR code becomes too dense, meaning lots of information that you're doing, you can make it where it doesn't work. Okay. For instance, on the bottom here, I have my contact card for my contact information. When I scan that, it doesn't work. We use Fox Barcode QR for prior conferences where you had the QR code on the back of your badge. Okay. For a while, they weren't working and we ended up going to something else. So just understand that you have to work with possible limitations and test it within your own environment. Okay.
So that's a limitation of Fox Barcode QR, not QR codes in and of themselves.
Yes, I believe yes. The question is it a limitation of barcodes or is it a limitation of the Fox Barcode QR? I believe it's based on the size of the QR code and the amount of information on it. Is it a limitation of QR codes in general? I guess it's entirely feasible. I don't know the specifics of that. So, but in this case, trying to print that dense one on the bottom onto a 1-inch label became unreadable, unusable. Okay. Now the one above that you see there, that's just the one, I believe, for southwestfox.net. That's just a URL. That's those URLs are, I've never had a problem with the URL being generated to a QR code, which is what a lot of QR codes are for, marketing. Okay, any questions? Yep, one more.
Have you ever considered to draw directly on your effort, not without a picture in between?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Have you ever tried to draw barcodes directly on your effort without picture?
The question is, have I ever tried to generate a QR code by myself manually? Is that what you're asking? No. No. The answer is no. I have people who do that for me. Extend your team. I mean, learning exercises are fun, but I can learn from this. I don't need to learn on my own in this case. Okay. Fox charts, another of the OGs, so to speak, in VFPX. Cesar from South America, Jim Nelson, and now Alex Uden are creating graphs so easy to do within your application that it's almost, I mean, if you need graphing, there's no need to use Excel. This will work great. I mean, if you don't need the Excel licensing or you don't have output to Excel as a requirement. It's super easy to do. There's multiple versions on VFPX, which we'll see in a minute, which can be slightly confusing. It has a help file. There are, I believe, 2 projects on VFPX that have a help file. A lot of them have READMEs and documentation and markup, but these actually have one in a help file, although it's a little old. And there's plenty of examples. I don't really want to necessarily show Fox charts specifically and go through the details of how to use Fox charts because all of that is easy to use. I am going to show you on the VFPX site what I mean by versions. You have a 1.46 beta, 1.47b. Okay, 1.47b is after 1.46, so why is there 1.46 beta? Unless you are running the beta code and you like to do that, I don't know. 1.37 is like the more current one that I've been using until I started researching for this white paper and found that there was actually a newer version. So I'm just pointing these out just so you're aware of that. Here's the help file. You can see it's to version 1.2. Okay, so obviously there's some changes that have been made. The help file hasn't been updated. There are markup documents on the VFPX site, so you will have that available to you. In the interest of time, I'm going to fly without a net. Always fun to do. Okay, this is what Fox charts looks like when it's displayed within a VFP form. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated. But this is what I think is the key here. I mean, obviously charts are important to your users, but how many times do you display a chart for the user? What's one of the first things that happens after they display the chart?
Can you change it?
Can you change it? Exactly. Well, we can, of course, change it. We have the ability to change it. We can write code to change it, but we can go back and forth all day. An expensive effort for our customers and a time-consuming, life's too short moment for ourselves. Or we can leverage something that Jim Nelson did more as a training tool for us and give that to the users. Chart options. I'm going to leave this at the top. I'm going to move this chart. Actually, let's do this. Move this to the bottom. I'll leave this at the top so you can see it. Is that readable or do you want me to zoom in? It's not really all that important that you zoom in, but basically, this is like a builder for the Fox chart that's displayed. Okay. And it's allowing the users to go in and do the things that, we would be asked to do. I don't really want a bar chart. I want a donut. I actually do want a donut right now. Every time I see a donut chart, I have a taste to go to West View Orchards by our house to get a donut. So anyways, you can have the users make the choices on their own. Okay. This builder, for our sake, gives us the code. It also at the moment would give your users the code unless you disable this or just remove this tab from this dialog. But this really gives the users 100% control over what their charts look like. Okay. The charts can be saved to images. They can be used on reports and so on. It's just a matter of you taking programmatic control to make all of that happen. The thing I want you to take away from this particular topic of the session is giving your users the power to work with their graphs so you can do things that are more important. All right. Any questions? Okay, great. Oops. Visual charts. Fox Stack. Okay. This is a project I have never used, but I wanted to go through the 140 plus projects to point out that there are projects that are very specific in nature, that have a very defined functionality for you, and are probably considered trivial. I think it was in the second year, maybe my first year of computer science in college, that I had to simulate stack processing. Now, stack processing is first on, last out, or last in, first out, whatever your preference is, FIFO or LIFO. It's no FOMO. It's okay. But you get the stack processing when you want to add things onto a stack and then do them in reverse order. Okay. If you're like sitting here going, well, Rick, I'm more of a queue processing kind of guy, there is FoxQ on VFPX by Erwin Rodriguez, who's the developer for this. So anyways, it's very trivial, right? You just build an array, add it to an array, and just reverse process the array. Well, you can push and pop onto a stack. And when you think about it, when you're doing collections or an array processing, while it's trivial, you still would have to debug it. Or you can instantiate an object and start pushing and popping all day long. Okay, that's what this is all about. So I was trying to figure an example because I don't have a real world example that I've used this for, but I thought maybe you would get some appreciation of what my summer was like. So what we're going to do here is we're going to step through this code, but basically you set procedure to foxstack.prg, you create the object, and then you just start pushing and popping. So let's just run it. And for some reason, it doesn't retain its font size for me, but that's all right. One little thing to fix. All right. So like I said, you come in, you set procedure, you create the object. So I'm going to push early spring. I pushed my VFPX session onto my work stack. Okay. Then all of a sudden, real customer work came in. A couple projects, got a new customer. We onboarded them. How many plates do I have spinning at the moment? 4 plates. So I have 4 things on the stack. All right. Well, fortunately, I quickly popped off onboarding the customer, and I got customer B project 1. I'm interrupt-driven developer. Okay. Last thing, first off, those kinds of things. I finish what I have right at that moment. I'm like a processor. I just take the interrupt, I process it, I spit out the next instruction. All right. How many plates are spinning now? 2. Wow. Yeah, Rick, why are you so worried about all the work you're doing this summer? It's not that big of a deal. So I all of a sudden got another push from a project priority one, another priority one, another priority one from the same customer, all priority one projects. Never happened before in anyone else's job. I know this is just me. All right. So let's go in and it's like, okay, what's the next task I have to do? Well, I really don't want to work on it. So how do I know it's on the top of the stack? Well, you peek. So you peek into the stack and it comes off and says, you got project priority one, the project 4 priority one now. All right. So where is that VFPX superhero session that I have to work on? Well, we can look at that by doing a search and it tells me it's at the bottom of my stack. Okay, cool. Well, that's all right. How many projects are off the plate? Well, you can check that by, is the stack empty? In this case, my stack is never empty. All right. So you check if it's empty. All right. Well, it's now Labor Day. We're going to have to delay something. Something falls off the stack. So to get to my project, I have to unstack all the projects. So we're going to delay and we're delaying and we'll delay it. And don't tell the customers, but all priority ones got delayed during September. Actually, one customer emailed me the day before the conference and I had to actually fess up that I delayed it. All right. How many plates are spinning? Just the one. Sweet. Get to focus on the session. All right. So you can see you push and pop. You can check if it's empty. You can peek to see what's in the queue, and you can find if there's something on your stack. It's somewhere on the stack. All works great. All this code works fine. All this example took me about 5 minutes to code. It really wasn't a lot of work, and I didn't have any issues at all with it. All right, so now we get to September 26th, which was the day the conference started. I have to pop off my session because it better be done, which it wasn't. All right, so anyways, we popped that one off. I'm now down to 0, but I have to push on the Southwest Fox Conference. We hit today, we get to pop that one off. Tomorrow, we get to push on the Stockholder Retreat in Sedona. It is a retreat. It's fabulous. Anyone wants to come up, they're welcome. At the end of the week, next week, I'll pop that off. I'll have 0 plates spinning. That's my week. That was my summer. Actually, the number of pops and pushes for the customer projects was protect the innocent was a lot more.
Rick?
Yes.
Where's the one that tells you how many are in the delayed stack?
Yeah. Well, actually, what I probably should have done is create a second stack, create another object, and push those on, right? But that's the kind of thing. You can have as many stacks as you want, as many queues as you want. And that's the kind of cool stuff that is on VFPX, that if you don't go through the list, you won't necessarily know about them. Please just do that. Do yourself a favor and go through the list once a quarter, once every 6 months, just to see what's out there. You never know what you're going to need in the future.
A common use for a stack would be like a back button.
Yeah, back button.
If you're navigating in a form and you want to go back in the same order, that's a stack is common.
Yeah, Doug's comment is that a back button on a form to go through what you were working on through your application, and then back, you pop things off the stack. Yeah, great idea. All right, any questions on that? Yep, go ahead.
Are these named queues that have permanence outside of the application?
The question is, are they named queues that are outside your application? No, they're in memory. It's an instantiated object. When it goes out of scope, so does your stack.
Can you grab the stack and save it?
Yeah, yes, you can't. The question is, can you grab the stack and persist it over instances of your application? Yes, you could. You would just have to write those out to a table or a file of some sort. Yeah. Okay. All right, we are desperately behind, as would be normal. Okay. Rapid fire. Theme title bar. Okay, I'm not necessarily a advocate for changing your application for the sake of modernizing it when you have other features that you might have to add to it to give the users functionality that they want, nor am I advocating deviating from standards for UI. But this will do both. This will deviate the standards for UI as well as give your application a different look if your customers are like, oh, that looks so 1980s or early 2000s or early 2010s. You can make your application look different. Okay, there are some drawbacks to this particular tool, this particular component, but it will, in conjunction with using something like Doug's ribbon control, you can have your apps look more like the Microsoft Office looking apps, which also violate standard Windows UI, right? So this is the ability to do this. And I'm not going to go into all the details. It's in the white paper how you implement this, but I will just sort of give you a brief overview. Okay. 2 classes, theme title bar base and the settings base. The settings is where you set things like your color, the fonts, and so on. That's used by the base class. I subclass both of those to my own so that I can extend the functionality and make it simpler to use for me. All you do is drop this component onto a form, doesn't matter where. It will automatically adjust your controls so that they're in the same relative position, and it will create the title bar much higher than the standard Windows title bar that you get on a standard Windows form. If I run this, it allows me to drag and drop it. I can move it around. I can change the description. I can change the caption. What I can't do is right click on this and get a menu that you get when you have the menu for the closing or moving the windows around. That's not available on this. It gives you the minimize, maximize, and restore button, and as well as the close button that you traditionally have on a Visual FoxPro form. Okay. But I wanted to show you, like, this label stayed at the bottom. It's all moved, everything relative. And now you just have a different look of your application. You can do it in your base class and have all your forms conform. You can change the colors and the fonts on each form to be different. It's up to you. The world's your oyster, so to speak. All right. Any questions? Don't ask me how it's implemented.
No, just feedback. I did this years ago,
Yes.
and my users were bugged because they were losing usable space in the form. If they had a smaller display, I was basically taking 2 lines away of.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Richard is commenting that you're using valuable screen real estate, and that is a true statement. Absolutely. Users,
It looked marvelous.
the users are right. But yes, it's how you look, not how you feel. All right. Let's pick and choose the poisons here. Okay. I think we're going to do what I think is a fun one, and then I'll overview the last one. UTC date. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of a space-time continuum kind of person, and time zones is one of those things that always has fascinated me since I was a young guy. And so I like to know what's going on, where different time zones are, what time it is in different time zones. I have friends all the way in Europe. I have literally friends all over the world, and I don't know necessarily the time. Even when I talk with Doug, when he lived in Saskatchewan, I never knew what time it was in Saskatchewan because they stay off of daylight savings time, as does Arizona. And when you're working with conference people at the hotels and vendors in the area, knowing what time it is there can be mentally exhausting. So we have UTC, the UTC Date Time Project. And this project gives you the time as well as coordinated universal time. All right. So if I want to know what the universal time is right now, All I have to do is run the UTC app. Once I install the project, I run the app, and now I have an object on the underscore screen object. If I want to know what universal time is right now, I call the now method. If I want to do math in Washington, Michigan, I can look at the local time based on what the universal time is at this moment, which I already grabbed. So I have universal time. If I know universal time, I now can find out what time it is in any place in the world, as long as I know the time identifier or the time zone identifier, which in the white paper, I refer to a wiki page that will give you the various time zone identifiers. Let's just run this. So in Washington, it's 12:40 Eastern time. That's what my body clock is on. In Chicago, it's 11:40. Winnipeg, 11:40. Both are in the central time zone in North America. In Polson, Stacy, you're on 10:40. It's right here in Scottsdale. It's 9:40, which means I have less than 5 minutes to do my session, finish up my session. Rick, sorry, you're still probably going to be facing 6:40 a.m. where you're going soon. So things are, various time zones. It gives you not only the time, but also the abbreviation for the time zone, which is something I want, something I'd like to have. Okay. I'd like to run this one. This is an example that came with it. The lunar landing for Apollo 11 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. It has a time in various places around the world. My favorite is what time was it in Moscow when they did that? I am certain there were a few people who were angry at that moment in time.
It's Moscow, Iowa.
No, it's not Moscow, Iowa. No. And then you can do time zone math. So if you want to be able to know how many time zones, or how many hours, I should say, it is between time zones, all you have to determine is what time is it now. And then there's code here that will actually do the calculations because you'll have two different times, and you just subtract and you'll figure the hours out. Really good code for systems that need to run on universal time instead of local time. If you have users in multiple locations running over a remote desktop, for instance, you want to reflect their time, not necessarily the time that the user 3 time zones over saved the data. Okay, any questions on that? All right, last one that we're going to cover today is the Win32 API. How many people enjoy doing Windows API calls? See, a lot of you, several. This is not my superpower. This is more like the kryptonite. Thank you, Michael. My kryptonite. I am not really good at doing this, but I am really good at Googling. So if I know there's something I need to do, I can Google it, go through, find out the Stack Overflow answer that somebody posted 5 years ago, find out the API calls that they need, and then I can come into the Win32 API project, which, by the way, was thanks to Anatoly, who, this used to be News to News. If you were familiar with News to News, that was how I did it before. But Anatoly gave all the intellectual property to VFPX, and Thor put it all into the markup in the documentation. So what I can do is I can come on to into the project, go into the markup that has all the APIs in alphabetical order, do a search on the browser, find the project, click on it, the code's there. Now, is the code beautiful? I don't care. It works. All right. I could beautify the code later. And so this is how I resolve all my Windows API calls. If I don't already have friends who have coded it for me, I have a friend who has coded it for me. All right. So thanks to Anatoly, thanks to Thor for is he here today? No, he's actually not. He's on the way back. A labor of love, what he did for our community to do that. Okay. I'm not going to take questions because I have 30 seconds ago. All right. There's the old News to News site. You can't get it anymore, but the Wayback Machine did save me. All right. In summary, hopefully today you saw a number of different projects. Whether they're useful or not useful to you was not my goal. My goal was to introduce you to some of the projects that don't necessarily get love at sessions, but also things that I do use for the most part. And there are, I think I can do this session for part 2, 3, 4, all the way for infinity and almost beyond. Okay. Probably going to get a Disney copyright hack on the YouTube video on that one. So anyways, my idea was just to get you guys exposed to that. Hopefully maybe some inspiration. Maybe you guys will spawn some new ideas for VFPX. Doug and I are always willing to take project submissions under consideration. In fact, Bill Anderson had one just yesterday that he was verbally trying to submit. You know how that went. I don't know if Bill's here to. I'm not taking a hit on you, Bill. Just joking. Hopefully you got some ideas. Please do your evaluations. I really appreciate getting evaluations, both positive and constructive criticism. Hope you enjoyed the last couple sessions of the day today. Thanks for coming to this session.